Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Start Something, where we take you behind the scenes of the founder journey, breaking down what it takes and how it can change your life. My name is Shruti.
And my name is Bailey. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about how to balance relationships, friendships, and the projects or the companies that we're working on. So this is definitely a journey that we have both been on. And so I'm really excited that we're going to have a few minutes to talk about this. I'd love to start by learning a little bit about your journey from the time that you started your company to now. How have your relationships and your friendships, and even the extent to which you prioritize building relationships, how has that changed?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and one that I didn't think about before starting my journey with building a company, right? When you're excited about an idea, you don't think about all your other plates. You're so narrowed in on your idea. And you have to keep in mind, I was also working at Microsoft on the time when I started my company. And so I'm working all hours of the day. There's not a chance to breathe or talk to anyone else outside of work, right? I'm just focused on working out, working at Microsoft, and working on my startup, and waking up at 4 a.m. and sleeping at like God knows what time every night. And in the process, I obviously had not enough time for myself, my relationship with myself. I didn't have enough time with my friends, with my family. And ultimately, when I reflect back on that journey, it was a huge pain point. And it's part of the reason why I want to talk about it today, because I went through a journey where I sacrificed a lot without realizing it. And only after we sold the company, only after we merged both the tools and I finally got a break, I got a chance to reflect back on the fact that, oh wow, I've lost a lot of friendships through this process. And yes, it's natural through age as you get older. Like when you're in college, you have a big group of friends, right? And as you get out of that stage of college, you're working to find your adult friendships, your college, like who do you want to maintain with from college and maybe from your childhood? Who do you still want in your life? You obviously have that to begin with. And then to layer that on top of building your own company, that's just when everything hits the fan. So I'll take a pause there. Is that a lot? Is that making sense so far?
It absolutely resonates. And I really loved this idea that you shared with me before we started recording, which was, let's say you are successful and you start one of those billion-dollar unicorn companies and you don't have anyone in your life to share it with. Was it actually worth it? And, we hear a lot of stories about founders who, whether they're successful or not, who've given up a lot of relationships and even any amount of self-care on their journey. And so whether your company results in failure or huge success or somewhere in between, there is a big question about, okay, who's actually in my life to share the experience with me, to share the successes, to share the failures. And so I thought that was a really good point that you brought up. And it's definitely true in my life that for the first couple years of my company, I couldn't prioritize any relationships. And looking back, I definitely feel like prioritizing relationships and self-care has meant so much to the mental and physical health and emotional health I have now. However, I also feel that I couldn't have, when I was all in on the company, I couldn't have made certain relationships a huge priority just because I was all in, like you said. I was so obsessed with starting the company. And I also think it's really important as friends to support our friends when they're maybe entering into a hustle era or a period where they're really excited about something, and knowing that it's not about us, that they're completely invested in something. I feel so lucky that my best friend at the time kept calling me and kept reaching out, even though she knew that I was totally heads down on my company. And she used to call me while she was commuting just in case. And honestly, I didn't pick up the phone on most days because I was in the middle of something, whether it's fundraising or, meeting or working with my team. But she kept calling. And to this day, I look back on our friendship and I'm just like, oh, thank you so much for continuing to show up even when I wasn't being a good friend. And right now, she's actually in the middle of a huge work project too. She's staying up till 4 a.m. working. She's not really able to do anything for herself at this point. And the other day, she apologized to me. She said, "I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm being a terrible friend." And to me, I'm like, girl, are you kidding? Like, you were so there for me when I was being a terrible friend. I have nothing but support for you. And so I think that prioritizing our relationships is so important. And also being a really supportive friend when we see the people that we love going into that kind of hustle era is also really, really meaningful.
Yeah. I think that kind of comes back to your values, right? Because for me, like, relationships are a huge part of my value system. And when I think about the day that I die, like after I've lived a whole life, when I reflect back on my journey, I want to have gone through a successful marriage. Like, I want to have kids, I want to have my best friends. My dream would be my best friends living on the same street as me. I want all of these things, but I also want a successful business, right? I want so many different things. And the way that I talk about it with a lot of my friends is we have all these different plates, right? And I feel like you can't have all 5 plates or all 10 plates up in the air. There will always be something sinking, and you have to figure out how to manage and balance all of these plates. And that's what I've learned after I've reflected. But to your point, anyone it was kind of a relationship check with myself, with my friends, with my family, like, who is in my life? Who is important to me? Who should I maintain? And like, who has been there to support me through such a hard journey? They're the people who ultimately now I'm like, you're the people that I want to be living on the same street with, These are the people that I love and care about. And now I'm able to support them too while they're going through their hardship. So I think you're making a really good point. And my mom, and we were talking about this right before we started this, right? My mom's always known I wanted to have my own company. And something she's told me is she's like, you're really good with all your friendships. She's like, I honestly think you have too many friends at this point.
Geez, I hope I passed the test with your mom. She's like, Bailey can stay. I hope.
But something she said was quite literally, at the end of the day, once you go ahead and work really hard and you go after these ideas and you chase your dreams and you go and make a bunch of money, don't you want people to share that with? And I'm like, yeah, this money means nothing without the people that I love and care about and the ability to share and spend time with them and use that to make everyone happy. I don't know, just make everyone happy and feel loved. So in order to be there after you finish that journey, you have to have that throughout, right? And you have to keep remembering to prioritize those relationships. So question for you is like, you were an extremely busy woman. When I get time with you, I feel grateful. I'm like, oh my God, Bailey's in town. I'm so excited. How do you manage all of these different plates? How do you prioritize your relationship with your family? Because that's a whole separate relationship than your relationship with your friends, maybe.
Absolutely. I think that for me, it really comes down to understanding what my priorities are. And if I look at literally a list, I'm totally a list girl. So looking at a list of what my priorities are and then looking at my calendar to see if my calendar actually displays the priority list that I have. And for me, even though I'm like very extroverted and people probably think I like, kind of flight around from friend to friend, I actually really prefer to invest in a few relationships. And so in my life, I usually only have a few like close friends that I'm checking in with and talking to. And even then, I still sometimes go into hibernation mode where I'm just working or just plugging away on something. But I love investing in like a few really meaningful relationships that give back to me that I can also pour into, because I've had a lot of relationships where it feels like I'm pouring into them, but it doesn't feel like they're pouring into me the same way. And that kind of leaves me feeling like a little bit starved. And so I'm in a period of time now where I'm asking myself, like, what do I need and how can I give that to people? And how can I prioritize relationships that are doing the same thing?
Yeah.
And so in my life, I have some friends that I really invest in. I have, of course, my fiance and my mom. And those are the most important relationships in my life. And I check in with my mom like almost every day. I mean, we talk a lot. And, my fiance, we have really dedicated time together in the evenings where we're not working. And that's really important to us. But then in terms of prioritizing other relationships, I know for me, and I bet you feel the same way, that I want to mentor so many women. Like, gosh, there are so many students, especially students that I meet at UC Berkeley, who come to me and they're young startup, the young founders starting their companies. And I wish that I could do like daily coffee chats with all of them. And the truth is that I can't, not at this point.
Yeah.
But what I can do is I can host events and invite a bunch of them to attend simultaneously. And then it's even better than just getting coffee with me because they get to meet other female founders who are in an industry that they might resonate with more than like disaster management, right? And so even though I don't have the time at this point in my life to meet with everyone for coffee every day, I really make an effort to host events, whether they're large events or even just like a reading group that gives these women a chance to come together, build really meaningful relationships, and also support each other as we take our lives and our dreams and our goals to the next level.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of ambitious women are struggling to feel deep, meaningful support from other women in their lives. This has been my experience. I've heard this from a lot of other female founders.
You've heard it from me.
I've definitely heard it from you, that we crave having women in our lives that don't feel in any way threatened by the fact that we're pursuing our dreams.
Yeah.
That instead they show up and they cheer us on, right? And so since I can't meet with everyone for coffee, I really try to create those environments so that women can come together and feel like they have an opportunity to be their biggest self.
Yeah.
You know, they're like their shiniest self. They do not have to, you know, put their light underneath a bushel. They don't have to, you know, be small to make other people feel comfortable. And so those are the ways that I prioritize some of these relationships that I might not have as much time for at this point in my life.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you said. Have you considered starting a podcast?
You know, I do think starting a podcast would be a great way to reach a broader audience. I'll add that to the list. We should start one.
We should.
You know, I've always wanted to start something.
No, I love how far we've already taken this podcast, and I haven't even had a chance to share this with you off camera, but actually I've started receiving DMs from girls who are like, hey, I've listened to this episode that you've released. Like, I actually had a couple more questions, or I loved what you said. Here's how I'm getting started. And I'm like, wow, that's so powerful and meaningful to know that we're able to help people long lasting, right? Our podcast isn't just okay, join us live or anything like that. You can listen to it anytime, anywhere, any place. You can listen to us again if you like. I don't know how much people love listening to us, but I'm happy to see the impact already. And I feel like I'm building a relationship with people online too right now, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. And I have loved how many people have reached out to me and said, hey, I'm starting something, like, you know, here's what I'm working on. Are you available for a call? And that is something that I will always make time for. Like, I love when I get a message and someone's like, hey, can I just get 15 minutes on the phone to like have a conversation? I love that. And I think that if we can create that kind of an environment and a space where people feel like they can actually participate in this dialogue, then we're going to have a much bigger impact beyond just, you know, reaching a few people who might be listening right now, but also really investing in the community that allows all of these incredible women to meet each other and support each other. And maybe they'll work together, maybe they'll advise each other, maybe they'll just, you know, be the friend on the other end of the phone who's there for you during one of your founder meltdowns.
Yeah.
Regardless, I feel like those relationships that come out of these conversations are the most meaningful aspect of the work that we're trying to do right now.
Yeah, no, exactly. So to tie that back into relationships, right, which is where the question ultimately started, there's one more thing I think I wanted to touch on that I've heard from a lot of women, which is not just women, really anyone, which is, I don't have time for this, or I don't, like, how do I make time for friendships? And so something that I wanted to share with our audience, with you too, about some tips and tricks that I've learned and taught myself recently is habit stacking in order to prioritize relationships. And I know that sounds really type A behavior if you want to label it, but it's what accomplishes, it allows me to accomplish balancing all of my plates, right? So something that I like to do is every Sunday, I literally mark out my entire calendar, which just sounds like exactly what you do. From the moment I wake up to the moment I sleep, even if it's walking to the gym for 15 minutes, that's marked in my calendar. Even if it's meeting up or taking an Uber to go meet up with a friend, that's in my calendar. And then while I'm with that friend, if I'm like, oh man, I have to exercise, I actually prioritize asking my friend, hey, could we go for a walk and a coffee so I could get my 10,000 steps in? But I can also catch up with you and really just be in the moment with you and balance my relationship with you, right? And maintain my relationship with you. So that's something that I've been doing. And the other thing is texting. I'm the worst person I mean, you have all the experience in the world with...
I think we're competing for worst texter. Texting is not my love language.
Yeah, it's really not. But I am totally present when I am in person with you. And so something that I have started telling anyone who's close to me in my life is this, like, hey, this is my weakness. I am not good at texting, but if you call me, I will drop things. I'll pick up the phone for you. I will make time for you, or I'll show up for you in person, whichever you prefer. Like, this is how I operate. So a little bit of self-awareness and in yourself on how you operate and communicating that to your close relationships is a great way for them to know, right? So that way they're not like my best friends know they're not hearing from me on a text message, like maybe like an audio voice message, if anything. But I love that they can still love and support me. And I love that we still keep up with each other and we're able to communicate. And it's because I've told them, hey, here's what I'm good at. Here's what I'm not good at. And the last thing is in my calendar, every week I have blocks of days where I'm like, this evening is dedicated to my partner. This evening is dedicated to my family. This evening is dedicated to my friends. Even if it's 2 hours, that way my plates are all a little more balanced. Obviously, they all can't be equal, but at least they're moving like this instead of up and down in huge waves, you know?
Absolutely. And I don't think they're supposed to be like perfectly balanced and equal, but I love that. And I'm totally here for a good habit stack. And it's interesting how research shows that after college, the time that we spend with our friends drops off a cliff.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about in terms of getting together and even working on something with a friend is actually a really meaningful way to get that time together, because that same research shows that while our time falls off a cliff with our friends, our time with our coworkers goes through the roof. Yeah. And it stays pretty high for the rest of our lives if we are in a working or corporate environment. And so I think looking for ways to collaborate with people on things that people that you really want to spend time with is super meaningful, because maybe you're working on something, maybe you're studying, but being able to have someone there that you can spend time with, it really pours into our lives. And I know for me, something that I miss a little bit about college is study sessions where we're studying for an exam, and even though we're not chatting the whole time, like we're still there together. I love those sessions. And I think looking for opportunities to create something similar is really meaningful. And it's also one of the reasons why I'm really glad that we're doing the podcast together, because it means that I get to keep spending time with you on a regular basis, even though like we are just, our lives are moving in wild directions and we're busy all the time. But since we have to maintain a regular cadence, we're like, oh, I only have 45 minutes, but I can stop by. Like we can get this together. And I think designing our lives intentionally moving forward to prioritize getting time with friends means so much, but also having grace for ourselves when we're in a hibernation period is also so meaningful. Yeah. And having grace for other people when they are in their hustle or hibernation era is also really important.
Yeah. I think relationships ebb and flow in general, and it's important to remember that as you continue to go through your priorities and your friends continue to go through their priorities.
Absolutely.
And now I'm looking at the clock and you know what time it is.
We're really trying to keep these episodes to 20 minutes. So I'm actually impressed that we were able to wrap this up, because obviously we could talk about relationships for 2 more hours. We didn't even scratch the surface of romantic relationships. So that will be a second episode. It'll be part B. Perfect. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you're ready to stack some habits together with your relationships. I'm definitely feeling inspired. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye.
Bye.